afternoon. I'm not sure if it's evening or good afternoon. I think it's evening, right? And welcome to this session of our book review for this month. And welcome again to the familiar faces, but also welcome to the new faces to the Uongozi Resource Center for this book review. It's very exciting, this book, and of course our reviewers also we're also very excited for her to be with us today. But before we get going into the book, before we dive into the book, I would like to firstly welcome our CEO for Uongozi Institute, Mr. Kadari Singo, to welcome us all and to give us a little bit of the context as to why we have these book review sessions. Karibu sana, Mr. Singo.
Good evening, everyone. This is our 21st edition of the book review. I believe some of you have been here to all of them. Ibra, have you been to all of them? He's the only person I can confirm that he's never missed a single book review. How many of you have been to at least 10? At least 10. Yes, I can attest to that. 5 book reviews. Okay. 4. Some of them 2. First time. We have some first time, which is very good actually.
Yes.
It's good to see some first time. You are going to have some very good experience today. So this is our 21st. I can't believe we started this a few years ago. Now we are on the 21st book review. So we have read 21 books for those who have been attending all of them. Allow me to recognize the presence of our reviewer today, Miss Atteeya Sumar. Did I get it right?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, thank you very much. The country director of Aga Khan Foundation in Tanzania. I would like also to sincerely thank you for accepting our request to review the book. We know you have a very busy schedule, but you were able to join us today. I would also like to extend my special appreciation to Mr. Christian Bwaya, a lecturer. You can raise your hand so they can see you. A lecturer of psychology from the University of Dodoma and a resource center member from Dodoma branch. And he also told me he's doing his PhD, but his PhD is on emotional intelligence, looking at the children. So very interesting. We are looking forward for you one day to come and present that here. Once you are done with your PhD, I don't know which year you are in right now. We just started. But also Mr. Amendosa, the CEO of Dar Ceramica Center, a resource center member from Dar es Salaam branch, for agreeing to be the discussants of this book. I'd also like to express my gratitude to all of you, the members who are here in this room, but we also have online members attending today, for taking the time to attend this session. We truly appreciate your presence today. Thank you for your participation and for joining the efforts of promoting the reading culture as part of the Uongozi Institute's role in creating a platform for dialogue that broadens understanding of leadership and sustainable development in Tanzania and across Africa. Today, we are going to review a book titled The Fearless Organization, Creating Psychological Safety in the Workplace for Learning, Innovation, and Growth, authored by Amy Edmondson. It is a small book that explores the link between psychological safety and organizational performance. It also provides guidance on how to create a culture where it's safe to express ideas, ask questions, admit mistakes, and learn from them. I would rather not go into the details of the book myself, as the reviewer will share more information on this. I would like to thank you once again for attending this session and wish you a fruitful and productive discussion. Karibuni sana.
Asante sana, Mr. Singo. Asante sana, Mr. Singo, CEO of Uongozi Institute. And yes, 21, wow. I remember when we started discussing the possibility of having these book reviews years ago, when I was also with you in Uongozi, and it seemed like a far-fetched idea. So it's fantastic to see it coming materializing and for us to be here 21 books later. So I would like to introduce you now a little bit more to our book reviewer for today. As Mr. Kadari Singh has already mentioned, with us we have Ms. Atteeya Sumar, who's the country director for the Aga Khan Foundation in Tanzania. Atteeya is a Tanzanian development leader and an advocate for gender equity, currently serving, of course, as a country director of the Aga Khan Foundation in Tanzania, where in this role, she leads initiatives focused on climate resilience, education, skills development, and community empowerment, particularly focusing for women and youth in marginalized communities. Previously, prior to her role as country director for the Aga Khan Foundation in Tanzania, Atteeya held the position of head of programs and partnerships at the British Council, where she contributed to cultural and educational collaborations. Her leadership and impact have been recognized through various accolades, including being named among Tanzania's top 100 changemakers by Serengeti Bites. And she's also listed among the top 50 women in management in Africa, on the continent. So fantastic. So we all
Thank you,
have.
Thank you very much.
But beyond her professional achievements, you'll see why she's absolutely the correct fit for this book review. So beyond her professional achievements, Atteeya is also a passionate writer and a reader and a storyteller. Her writing serves as a powerful tool to inspire, connect, and advocate for a more inclusive and compassionate world. And so I think we really, and Uongozi Institute, well done for picking the correct fit for this book today. So Atteeya, welcome. Welcome to Uongozi Institute's book review. And we really are excited and thrilled to have you with us. And as Mr. Kadari said, for taking time out of your very busy schedule to sit down with us and to speak about this very exciting and interesting book. And so now to get us started, again, I'd like to highlight the book, The Fearless Organization. Yes, creating a psychological safety in the workplace for learning, innovation, and growth by Amy Edmondson. And so to get us started in this conversation, Atteeya, let us start this discussion of our book by asking you to provide firstly a summary of the book, and then after that, if you could give us your general reflections on what the book is offering us.
Great.
Karibu.
Thank you so much, Namwaka, and thank you, Mr. Singo, for having me here. I'm absolutely honored, delighted to be here today. And hello to all of you present here and online as well. Before we jump into the book, I would like all of us who are present here today and online to take a moment and think, have you ever come across a situation at work where a decision is being made or an idea being presented or a discussion happening and you have felt some concerns, you have disagreed, or you have felt that this could backfire and you have wanted to speak up? Have any of you ever come across such a situation? Maybe we could raise hands. How many of you have come across such a situation?
Mario.
I would think everybody would have come across a situation at one point or another in your work where you wanted to speak up or raise a concern. And then what happened? Did you speak up?
No.
No. So the majority of you did not speak up, and including myself at one point when I was younger. So this book is exactly about that. It is about that moment when you hesitated to speak up and share your thoughts or your ideas or your feedback. That particular moment is what this whole book is about. And why did you not speak up? So this book is written by Amy Edmondson, who is a professor at Harvard Business School. And she has been doing research on psychological safety for over 20 years. But what prompted her to actually write this book was when Google did an internal study on what makes effective teams, the factors of effective teams. And they came across five. They nailed it down to 5 characteristics of effective teams. So there were the usual suspects, which is clarity and communication, strategy. But one thing which came out most important than all of them was psychological safety. And Google said this is what it took to make effective teams. And Professor Amy Edmondson said, oh, I've been researching on this for 20 years. I better put it all down in a book. So what is psychological safety? Because we've mentioned it a few times. You know, Mr. Singo mentioned it, and Namwaka and myself. So psychological safety is having a work environment where you are able or you feel comfortable and confident to speak up, to discuss, to debate, to challenge, to disagree, to share, without the fear of being humiliated, ignored, without the fear of punishment or retaliation. That is psychological safety. And we may feel that it would be really nice to work in an organization which has this. We think of it as a perk, as a nice to have, but it is not something which all organizations would think of having or are working towards instituting within their organizations. And when we look for jobs, it is also not something which we ever ask about or consider. But in this book, the author makes a brilliant case for why it is not a nice to have, it is not a perk, but it is a must have if an organization wants to learn, grow, innovate in this environment that we are living in, which is extremely fast paced, knowledge based, competitive, and uncertain. What I really loved about this book is that the entire book is peppered with real world studies. So I'm somebody who reads a lot. I have a library at home, not of this beautiful size, maybe someday, but a small library. And when I was asked to be a reviewer for this book, I was really happy. I had seen the previous, reviewers, and I've been following and hearing them. And I thought, yes, I mean, I would love to do this, but in my mind, I thought it's going to be a really factual, strategic business book, which I will have to put bookmarks and make notes so that I can remember. But when I started reading the book, it's just filled with real world case studies that make, that gives you an excellent picture of what happens when there is psychological safety in the workplace and when there is not. Years, decades of research with real world case studies where the author herself has studied these institutions, these organizations, collected all the data, and then put it in a story format. So it is a really easy read. And if we have some time, I would really like to share a case study from the book. Would it be okay to?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So this is a case study about what happens when there is no psychological safety. And this is a study of Nokia. We all know Nokia. In the 1980s, it was a leader. Same in the 1990s, it had 23% of the market share in the telecom industry. It was very well poised to, ride this wave of mobile technology well into the 2000s. But in 2011-ish, No, sorry, in the late 2000s. I don't remember the exact date now. All of a sudden, Nokia lost 2 billion euros. They lost their leadership position in the market, and they lost their cutting edge innovation. So there was an investigation, a study launched into this from 2005 to 2010 as to what went wrong with Nokia. And the study concluded that it was not a lack of innovation or teamwork or strategy, but it was the absence of psychological safety. The culture that was prevalent in Nokia was to please the shareholders. And therefore, all the teams were told to focus on that kind of work. When the middle managers or the engineers would go up to senior management and ask questions around the way forward, around the direction, they were told that you just focus on implementation. And they had a CEO who was actually famous for shouting at the top of his lungs. Engineers would have actually seen him doing that. And another one of their CEOs banged the table so hard at one of the meetings that fruit was flying in that meeting. Now, in that kind of work environment, would you feel safe and comfortable to go and say that, I think the market is moving towards this, or touch screens are going to be the next thing, let us focus on that? You would not want to do that because you know that you're going to be shouted at. So that led to the demise of an entire organization, which from the late 1800s had been in operation, not necessarily as a telecom, but as another, and then in the 1900s as a telecom. But this was related to an organization. In some instances, if you keep quiet, we say silence is golden, but not always. Sometimes silence is also deadly. And if you are not given the opportunity to speak up, or the at these things, but they did not come out right and say it very openly because they were scared of the reaction they would receive. Eventually, very sadly, that girl died. So here, silence was deadly. And if you think deeper into it, who would you blame? Would you blame the organization that created a culture where nobody could speak up? Or would you even blame those who did not speak up, knowing that maybe somebody's life was at stake? So this book drives that point home about how important it is. And then it gives leaders a framework, a toolkit on how to inculcate or how to develop psychological safety in your workplaces. So it is a very, very practical book as well, I would say.
Thank you very much, Atteeya, and thank you for sharing real examples as cited by the book. Because remember, there was a Nokia example, there was a Volkswagen example,
Yes.
Wells Fargo,
Yes.
and the U.S. Federal Reserve. Those were cited as when there was no psychological safety, and how talent basically wasn't enough. Because I think sometimes when we're thinking of the workplace, single yourself as a CEO, we tend to think of just of the talent of the individual, how qualified they are. But what this book is saying, and what this author is saying, is that there's more to performance of an organization. So thank you already for citing those examples. And I think we'll go back, especially for the silence issue. The book, I think it calls it the epidemic of silence. So we will go back to discuss that a little bit more. And I'm sure we'll also be able to touch on a lot more of those examples. But now bring it back to this point that it is more than just talent. And I think that's what the author is really driving home, that this fearless organization, it's both literal and metaphorical, yes? So from your reading of this book, Atteeya, how does psychological safety increase performance, knowledge, and innovation in a VUCA world? This is what the book called it,
Yes.
VUCA. VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And I think we can argue that this is the world in which we live in now,
Yes.
especially post-COVID, yes?
Yes.
So how does psychological safety serve to increase performance, knowledge, and innovation in today's world of work?
I don't think of any other way that we could continue with knowledge, growth, and innovation if there was no psychological safety. Because if you go to think, if people are not, the leaders are not always, actually are not most of the time, out there on the ground. It is your teams who have the latest data, who are doing the customer interaction. You are there, but you maybe, I will speak from my example, going maybe on a field visit. I'm not there each day and every day, seeing what are the trends, what is required. If you do not have that communication, if your team does not feel confident and comfortable with you to come and tell you, or to come and tell senior management that we think this is the direction that we need to be moving in, you would be left behind, very, very behind, because there are some organizations who actually have structures in place which allow feedback, which allow senior level staff and junior level staff to come together and critique and discuss. So for growth and innovation to happen, we need collaboration. We need communication. Yeah, we need talent of all sorts to be working together. And that is not going to happen if there is not a definite and a concerted, intentional effort to create an organization like that. Otherwise, things are moving at an exponential speed. In everything from technology to education to the way we do development, it is no longer give a fish. It is now teach them how to fish. And that is changing every single day. When we speak about working in the education sector, in development, it's now around technology. Yeah, it's ed tech. It's no longer just about giving desks and chairs. So if I am not an education specialist or a technical specialist, what I call myself, and I really like it in this book that she emphasized that, and I always thought as a leader, should I be saying that? Because I'm very quick to say, I don't know. So when I sit with my team, the first thing I tell them, okay, you have to teach me. I don't know. And here the lady gives an example of the CEO of Xerox,
Yes,
who actually called herself a don't knower. She said, I'm a don't knower. And I am so glad there are other people like me. Because as a CEO, we are not taught humility. As a country director, you're not taught humility. You are told that if you're not firm and if you're not this or that, people are going to take advantage of you and you will not have respect. So there is a very fine line to draw there where you are comfortable enough and confident enough to tell your staff that I am here to help you perform to the best of your ability and talent and knowledge. I'm here to make things easy for you, but I don't have your technical knowledge. So please tell me how I can help you, how I can help this organization, what can we do together? So I feel if there is no communication and collaboration, knowledge, innovation, growth, how would it take place in isolation? Because if somebody has an idea, but he or she cannot go and share it with the senior management, how are they going to apply that idea? Because you will need infrastructure around that. You will need a team around that. So without psychological safety, and we saw Nokia's example, that when they did not have psychological safety, the teams could not work together, could not innovate, could not be honest. The culture was not courageous. And so the organization did not survive that change which was coming in the telecom industry.
Thank you, Atteeya. And I think another example that was cited was in terms of organizations focusing on meeting targets.
Yes.
And so staff are engaged and focused on meeting targets for fear of underperforming. So I'd like to read directly from the book, which to guide the next question. The author said, many managers, both consciously or not, still believe in the power of fear to motivate.
Yes.
Right? They assume that people who are afraid of management or of the consequences of underperforming will work hard to avoid unpleasant consequences and good things will happen. And I think this is tied into that example in the book in terms of when you're focused on meeting the targets, KPIs, all over. I think even Mr. Singo, you know that as an institute, you have your big KPIs and then those are cascaded all the way down. And as some managers traditionally still use fear as a motivation. So in your position as a leader, Atteeya, how do you work with your management team for this culture of fear to change as a motivator for good work and good results?
When you mention fear, I always feel that fear will give you compliance. And that is the best it can give you. Beyond that, fear will not give you growth or innovation, because people will be working towards making sure that they're not deviating from, and then everybody's happy and safe. The organization does not grow, or it may even lead to detriment of the organization, but the individual does not grow. And for me, it is, as a leader, I feel very strongly, and I mentioned this to you earlier as well, that anybody that you are leading in your team has to also grow. They should not be intellectually and, if possible, within the organization in that same position forever and ever and ever. You have to help them grow. And if you're leading by fear, you cannot help them grow. So for me, it is really important to role model. I role model, and like I said, I always tell them I don't have the answers. But I'm sure if we sit together, we will come up with the answer. So at my workplace, everybody sits together a lot. We don't have very, very formal meetings, but we have meaty meetings, for lack of a better word. Our meetings are for purpose. We don't have an agenda where we have to meet no matter what, but we have to meet when there are things to discuss. And I have told my entire team that do not wait for a bi-weekly catch-up. I am here just to make sure that we are all working well together and that you are emotionally, psychologically, physically in a safe space to be able to work. So do not wait for that bi-weekly meeting. But within the Aga Khan Foundation, we also have some amazing programs. For example, we do a training for staff called the Coach Approach. So that is for all middle managers, where we nominate them, and then it is a global training where middle managers are trained on how to lead by coaching. So there is that. And then for women, we have something called a Wezesha program, where it helps women to build their confidence, to be able to speak up and then eventually lead. So we do have these programs to build confidence in people. But as a leader, I do not have a very formal approach with my team. I think that is very, very important. I think even when we do our performance reviews, it's a lot about how did you grow? What did you learn from, implementing this project until now? How do you think you could have done better? What could we have done? Even when we have a new employee, in the orientation, we make sure, the HR and myself, that we tell them very, very clearly that we are here to support you. So if you are not comfortable, if you're being bullied, please come and tell us. There is nothing that you cannot tell us. And especially when it comes to programs and projects, we are always looking for ways to be more efficient, to refine our implementation. And that can only come from the people who are implementing it. They are the ones who will come and tell us, well, I've tried this way, but it doesn't work, and I would like to do this way. Can we make some adjustment? So that is how we work. The questions are always, what did you learn when we did this? Even when we have events, when we finish even an 18-month project, we will sit and say, what could we have done differently? And who would we need? Who would you need in your team to be able to help you do this differently? So we do have a lot of conversations like that.
That's great.
And role modeling, as I mentioned before.
Thank you, Atteeya. And I think going back, linking that back to the culture of silence that you cited when you gave the example of Nokia, when people did not speak up, what happened to that company. So the author in this book uses the voice silence calculator. Remember, like it was that matrix where when somebody chooses to use the voice or the silent, when it benefits the individual or not, and when it benefits the organization or not. So that calculator I thought was really interesting to show that creating a workplace where people have a voice in the long run wins over silence. How do you work, and how some of the examples that have been cited in the books, what are some of the examples that have been cited from the book that work to break the epidemic of silence, which is what the author calls it, or what we call it, especially here in Tanzania, the culture of silence? Because these things, I think, is also important to put this book in context. And for us here sitting in Dar es Salaam, in Tanzania, there are also these other cultural elements that affect the way in which we feel, we work, we operate. How do some of the tools, or in the terms of the suggestions that the author brings forward in terms of breaking this epidemic of silence, or the culture of silence, and the voice silence calculator that she used really well to describe the benefits and the costs of being silent vis-a-vis not. How can we really use that and what is said in the book to apply it in our context here in Tanzania?
When she mentioned the epidemic of silence, and I don't remember that chapter very, very well, but there are a few things which she mentioned. Was one epidemic of silence was people pleasing. Yes. If I say something here, will they still like me? Will I come across as disloyal? Will I be insulted in front of everyone? Will I lose my job? Will I be ignored? And these are all the thoughts which come across in our mind when we do not speak up. And to be honest, I think the Gen Zs are doing really good on that part. Yes, they don't care if we like them or not. They will make sure that they are heard. Not always maybe understood, but they are heard. And I think that is, besides many other things, that is, I think, one thing that we can learn from them. The way we have grown up, we have been raised, or we have grown up, I think it has been instilled in us that there are layers and, above you. So you should speak here and you should not speak here. And we have seen that job security, I think before us, our fathers and grandfathers have worked in one company for 40, 50 years. Yeah. And for them, that was really important. Do your thing, don't interfere in anything else, and just come home and live your life. So you go to work at 8, at 5:30, you're home, and life is over. But the era that we are living in this modern technological era, very fast-paced. Work doesn't always shut off at 5 or 6 o'clock, and you can come home and say, okay, I'm done. And nor was the work at that time so collaborative. Everybody had their own office, and you did your own work. Sometimes you didn't even know what somebody else is doing in that office, but now we have the concept of open offices. We have the concept of teams where we are constantly also chatting, because we need each other. So this epidemic of silence has led to many, many deaths as well. And if I would recommend everybody to read this book. One was the example I gave of the little girl who died in the hospital, and Nokia. But then there is another one in which over 1,500 people died in a tsunami in Japan, which was very, very much preventable. But people were scared of speaking up because they were way junior. And there is one which really, really struck me was in February 2003, the United States launched a shuttle in space. And on the way back, when the shuttle was re-entering Earth, all 7 astronauts in the shuttle died. And when the study came out, when the investigation came out, it was something very preventable. And a junior engineer had raised it. When he saw the video footage of the shuttle being launched, he thought that something had fallen off and struck another part of the shuttle. And so when the shuttle came back to Earth, this could be dangerous. So he reached out to his boss. And he told his boss, and his boss said, we will now have to reach out to the Department of Defense, which I don't want to do. So the silence here as well, which I don't want to do. So I don't think that this is necessary. And so this engineer was very upset. And he just wrote an email to his colleagues saying, us junior engineers, we are not valued. We don't have any say. We can't reach to people above us. And that's it. He left it at that. They also had a meeting the next day to just see the video footage, and a couple of people observed that it seems like something has fallen off and damaged the shuttle, but this engineer did not say anything. He kept quiet. So everyone left it. And when the shuttle came back 2 weeks later, all 7 astronauts in that shuttle died because it made a fatal crash when it reached Earth. A very, very preventable disaster. But people were not willing to speak up, or were not willing to speak up hard enough or loud enough. So this is also now a matter of voice over ego. Right? Do you choose to speak up when you actually feel that this is going to result in physical harm? Or do you look at your own job security or your own ego that I do not want to be insulted, I don't want to be told off? At the end of the day, I feel the responsibility definitely lies with the organization, but the era that we live in, it is also a very moral era where people are aware of what their responsibility is just beyond doing their job.
Right.
So whether the organization provides that culture or not, there is also an individual responsibility. The organization's responsibility is to provide that courageous culture. But if it doesn't, it also falls on the individual to make that discernment that it's all right if I don't speak here, it's not a big deal, nothing major is going to happen. Or that I need to speak up here, or I need to leave. If this is the culture which is not going to change, then maybe I need to leave.
Thank you, Atteeya. And I think now bringing it back to, of course, Uongozi and Uongozi's mandate in terms of the 2 areas, leadership and sustainable development. So here when we're talking about leadership, the author in this book was very specific in pointing to the importance of listening.
Yes.
As a leader, as one key ingredient in avoiding excessive confidence. And I think I really like that, and I noted it down, that they call it sometimes leadership and leaders have this excessive confidence. And that's not even just on their own in terms of their own egos and the position of power, but also the confidence that that leadership position instills within the team members. So it also, there's that reluctance for the rest of the team to question the leadership, because they also have confidence in the leadership because it's a leader. It's just this assumption that the leader is leading. So how do you, as a leader, listen to your staff? You already started to give us some ideas, but maybe if we could just like dive a little bit deeper into that. How do you collect that input and ensure that that is feeding up to not fall into that trap of excessive confidence that really sits with a lot of leadership in all the different spheres, in all the different sectors, whether in public sector, private sector, different industries. And I think also that the book was very good in giving that. I think that one example that they gave was, again, the medical field. There's a lot of examples here from the medical field. The research was really based on what was happening around hospitals, the ICU, nurses and doctors, when the junior, the nurses, and they did not question the senior expert.
Yes.
The case of the oncology case with
the lady who got the overdose.
Yes, who got an overdose in her dose of chemotherapy.
Yes.
Just because they assumed that the expert knew this was the
Yes.
leader in this particular type of cancer. He was known throughout as the expert that knew what to do. And so nobody went back to check if the dosage was correct. And unfortunately, then the worst case scenario did happen. So I guess it's that excessive confidence, both in terms of the leadership, but also in terms of now the staff and the people who work under you, the teams. So how do you, and how does the book tell us to ensure that leaders listen and to ensure that leaders are seeking input that's constructive from their teams?
And I would like to start with an example of Pixar here.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that was such an amazing example. So we all know Toy Story, and I think Nemo, Finding Nemo. These were all movies made by Pixar. And what Pixar has done is they have developed something called brain trust. So a group of people get together from junior to middle to senior and give feedback to a director on their movie. And that feedback, it doesn't matter whether you're junior or senior, you are brought there for the purpose of critiquing that movie. Yeah. And there are guidelines on giving that feedback. You have to be empathetic. Yeah, you can't be using this as an, oh, when my movie I was directing, and she said this to me, so this is my chance to now. No, you're not there to sabotage the organization or to hurt somebody's feelings. So be empathetic. And you are giving critique on the product, not the person. Yeah. And the feedback has to be constructive. And then the director is also coached on how to receive that feedback. So these are people here who all have work to do, but they are coming here, sitting together and telling you what you can do better. At the end of the day, that decision is yours, but listen to it with an open mind. So I imagine, I mean, I don't do something exactly like this at my workplace, similar, but not exactly. So definitely something. I am looking forward sitting with my SMT and seeing how we can come up with something similar and implement that. So sitting in your office and thinking people will come and tell you is not the way to go forward. It is to proactively seek feedback. So either set up dedicated time with people that this time is for feedback. I'm not asking you for updates. This is not our one-on-one, but this is, and whatever you want feedback on, your leadership style, whether it is something happening in the organization, whether the implementation of a project, an unhappy partner, an unhappy donor. So be very active about seeking feedback. And then how you respond to unsolicited feedback is also very important, I feel. So somebody can come up to me and say, we had to spend this much money by this month. And, we haven't spent it. Julia, you would know that happens a lot in the development field. And now I know that there's a donor going to be breathing down my neck saying, are you guys even capable of, implementing this project? And then there will be the global team, who are maybe supporting us, or we are reporting to saying, what is happening in Tanzania, How are you going to get big sums of funding if you can't even finish this? So my first reaction would be, you are the project manager. How did this even happen? Or it will be, thank you for alerting me to this in time while we can still do something about it. So, it's very responsible of you to come to me and, we can put our heads together. Who else do you think we should involve in this? How do you think we should go about it? So there's a very big difference. If I was the kind of person who said, really, you can't even do this much? Now, what are we going to do? And you are the project manager, you should know. The guy is not going to come, or the lady is not going to come up to me and say that. They're going to find different other ways. And by the time I find out, it will be too late. So it is very important also how we respond to receiving the feedback. It's about your attitude. And then I think another thing is to also train the senior management, your SMT or a leadership team that you have, the heads of the departments, so that the entire SMT, from the CEO to the heads or the directors of the departments, are speaking one language. Somebody may not always want to come to the country director because they still feel some hesitancy. They should be able to go to another SMT member. You can't have only the country director being that empathetic servant leadership model, and then the rest of the SMT are, I am a director, So I think the entire leadership of the organization have to be on the same page. And empathy, I feel, is really important. When somebody comes to you admitting a mistake, and I think in this book, he says, celebrate failure.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't have the guts to do that yet. But I am more than happy to admit failure, use it as a learning point, as a growth point. And, I am very, very comfortable in saying, yes, I know I advised this, it didn't work, I made a mistake, I'm so sorry. We know now what not to do. How can we undo this? If I do that, I know that people in my organization will also come up and say, because they know that she can't tell us that, why did you do something wrong? Because she's the first one to say, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know how this happened, but now we know not to do this. What should we do now? If you are humble and admitting your shortcomings or your mistakes, then definitely the people working with you would do that too. Role modeling, this entire book, I think role modeling. We cannot create a psychologically safe environment where we are expecting everybody else to be abiding by empathy and compassion and be ready to admit their mistakes and be innovative and grow and collaborate and work in teams, and we don't do it. So actions speak louder than words in everything. So I think role modeling would be very important. And then and I can speak about Aga Khan Foundation, there are projects we implement globally, we implement regionally. So we work with global teams, we work with regional teams. So if my team came up to me and said, I'm not comfortable with this coming from the regional team or coming from the global team. And if I say that, I can't tell this person, I can't say anything, so let's just see what we can do best here. Now that is what I'm trying to show them, is I'm keeping my job safe. It really doesn't matter whatever difficulty you are facing, I'm not going to rock the boat, so you deal with it. But if that person has come to me and I have told them time and time again that my only role is to remove impediments from your path so you can implement the project to the best of your ability, because you know how to. You are the gender expert, or you are the education expert. And then when they come with the big impediments and I say, well, I don't want to rock the boat because that person is too senior, then I'm not setting a good example. So this is again where the ego comes in, where you leave aside your own comfort and say, I have to have this difficult conversation. I have to have it. So I feel it is really important to lead by example.
Thank you very much, Atteeya. I think the book touches on the fact that on the leadership and the ego component, that also really has to be kept in check. And you've already mentioned some of the concepts that the book offers. Brain trusts.
Yes.
I think that was really with an example of the Toy Story process.
I think where they took it a bit far was when they said that Google X, the alphabet company, actually gave 2 researchers bonus for failing. Yes.
So that's another concept. Yes, another concept
Yeah, that's
that
what
the book really speaks a lot about in terms of creating this psychologically safe workplace, is embracing risks and failures
Yes.
as part of the creative process. And I think this, even for us, failure, I mean, it's failure, right? It has a negative connotation. You feel bad about it. But this book is saying that when you want people to thrive, to grow, to give you good ideas, to innovate, you have to embrace failure. And I remember once I had a boss that told me, if you're to fail, fail fast.
Yes.
Fail very fast so that you can learn, pick yourself up, and move on with the lessons that you learn. So again, Atteeya, you said that you're still not there yet with the failure part, or the embracing failure?
No. I absolutely encourage my team to innovate. And we know that in that either things can work or not work.
Yes.
But I wouldn't be giving bonuses.
Yeah.
Or
You don't celebrate failure to that extent.
yeah, not to that extent.
So the book also talks about having transparency libraries, which I thought was really interesting in terms of now creating that safe space. And I think some of the examples cited were, for example, if I'm talking to a colleague about another project, if that person who's part of the project is not there, then we don't talk about it. I mean, it's difficult, I think, especially within the context with which you work. But then there's something about that transparency, that whatever you have to say to me, you can say to your fellow teammate. Because again, in this book, the concept of teamwork, which here was branded teaming,
Yes.
right, is really important. That nobody can do everything, and all the successes that you see in companies is not because of one person; it's because of teams. But they also talked about productive conflict, that it's okay to disagree and to even have that conflict, but it has to be productive, which I think aligns with what you're saying in terms of being empathetic.
It is a must to disagree.
Yeah.
If everybody is agreeing with you, there is something wrong.
Yeah.
There is something, and that's where you need to dig in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I feel in organizations where people don't disagree, I can give you a very tiny, simple example. We have just made our website. This is something very, very small. And I wrote to all the SMT members that I would need a good portrait photo, because right now it's just my photo on the website, and I think the whole SMT should be there. So can you please send all these photos to this person? And so one of my SMT wrote back to me and said, I have a good idea. Why don't we all do a photo shoot in the office? So then all the photos are standard, and it will look really nice. Now, I am the country director. I've already said, send me your photos. Was it really important to share this idea? I could have said, no, you have traveled. By the time you come back, it's going to be late. And really, but I actually thought, okay, this is a really good idea. And let's do it. It will be really nice. We can coordinate the pictures. Now, this is a very tiny example where a country director could feel that, this person didn't have to really come and tell me that let's do it this way, but you appreciate it. And don't just say, okay, we can do it. I mean, the idea is really good. So say that I appreciate this. I think this is such a good idea. So let's do this when you come back. It makes a very big difference. And also that this person felt confident enough to come and say this small thing to me. I mean, he could have said, well, you know, why should I disagree with the country director? It's just photos, right? And who's going to visit the website that much? Yeah, it's mostly now about social media.
Right.
But he felt comfortable enough to come and say, wait, I'm out of the country, but when I come back, let us do this together. So this is very small thing, because there are other things which I cannot mention here. They're confidential, where if you don't debate, there is no growth. How are you, when you are designing a proposal, or you are implementing a new project, let's say it is a gender-based project, and then you have your head of programs, and you have your partnerships person, and then you have your gender coordinator, and they completely agree that this is one way of doing it. You know, nobody argues, then I would feel that people are being bullied, or people are slacking. Somebody has come up with an idea,
Right.
and everybody else is saying, yeah, that is fine. So you're not using your mind. You're not challenging that person. So if there is no debate, there is something wrong in your organization. But that debate has to be productive. It has to be respectful. And everyone has to, if you have an idea which is in opposition to somebody else's idea, you have to convince the majority. So how we work is that if somebody has one idea, and then you come up and you say, I think it would work better this way, everybody has to be convinced. And that's when we go ahead and do it. So you have to come with a very strong case and say, I think this way is better.
Okay. So yes, again, like productive conflict, because that's how the author coined it. And I thought that was really interesting in framing it in that way, which is exactly, so conflict is necessary.
Very necessary.
Debate is necessary, but it has to be productive. And another concept or tool that the author points to is, you mentioned this already, is the ability for a leader to say, I don't know.
Yes.
And I think, again, for all of us, traditionally, we go to the leaders that they offer us that the answers. But you're saying that, the author is saying that no, the leader, it's okay for the leader to say, I don't know. And so to wrap up, Atteeya, the leadership toolkit, the author then presents this toolkit for leaders. And one of those is to be able to say, I don't know, which points to 3 categories. 1 is setting the stage, 2 is inviting participation, and 3 is responding productively. So can you speak to this framework and how leaders can use this framework to create a fearless organization? And this can really help to sum up this discussion.
So yeah, I really like this part, because while she's given all the examples of what is psychological safety and what happens when it is there and what happens when it is not there, I really like that towards the end, she actually tells us how to implement this. And I think we have kind of spoken a bit about this. So setting the stage and how we do in one way in our organization is when we have an orientation. We have a new staff, so now we are inducting them, and they start with the HR. So the HR will very, very clearly tell them here that there is nobody that you cannot reach out to, and there is nothing that you cannot say. I mean, when it comes to the work, yeah. So if there is anything concerning you, bothering you, you have an idea, you want to make things better, please come to me, because she's the HR and the organizational culture. Come to the CEO. If you are not comfortable with anybody, with me or the CEO, then reach out to whoever you are comfortable, but make sure that your message reaches the SMT or the country director. Don't wait. So we actually mention this very, very clearly, that we don't want followers only. We really want thinkers. We want people who are ready to challenge. So it's made very clear in the induction. And then when we have one-on-ones with with our people. I think the first thing, after asking them how they are, how their family is, where are they in a mental space right now, in an emotional space right now, at least we always ask them. You know, we've started a new initiative in the organization, for example. How are you liking it? You know, what do you think we can do better? When we have interns, they're there for a couple of weeks, then we ask them, you know, when they join, yes, we do the orientation, then we ask them after a week or so, how are you fitting in? You're coming from just so fresh from uni, or, you know, what do you think we could do better? Or you're coming from a different country. So now people know that there is a culture here. They're asking us. So you have set the stage. And when you have orientation for different roles, you actually tell them that this role is constantly evolving, this program, or that this is the demand of the donor, that we do things in a creative way. So please don't just follow the script. If you have ideas to improve, can we talk? So that is setting the stage. Anybody who joins Aga Khan Foundation Tanzania knows that I am expected to be participatory, vocal. Once a month, we have an all-staff meeting where nobody's giving updates. This is not an update meeting. This is anybody who we know, or you know yourself, that you are good at something, or you have gone and done the coach approach, for example. Now come and give us a fun presentation on that. Make it interactive. So every month, one staff member gets a chance to come and teach all of us something that you're skilled at. So that we have set the stage like that. And then there is inviting participation. Like I mentioned before, actively seek feedback. We also have something like feed forward in our organization. So we have a group of people whom we reach out to with our maybe goals. So I can say that these are my 2 goals. And then I have a group of people. I tell them, can you observe me now for the next few months? You know, I'm trying to work on these 2 things. For example, I'm trying to work on being assertive. And I'm trying to work more on internal communication. I feel I'm doing a lot outside, but inside we are slipping. So I have a few people from junior to senior. I tell them my goals. And then for 3 months, they observe me. Every 2 weeks or so, I ask them, how am I doing? So we encourage the SMT to also do that. So that's a feed forward kind of thing. So go out there and seek the feedback, seek the ideas. And then we have responding productively, which I also mentioned. When somebody comes with bad news, or when somebody comes and said, I made a mistake, how are you responding? Your words, your body language, words matter. Will that person feel like coming to you a second time? Are you telling them, well, you made a mistake, great. You were trying, you were doing something differently, right? So we have to appreciate that people are trying to break the mold, using their mind, being creative. The failure to fail is the actual failure. That means you are really not growing, nor are you helping the organization to grow. Nor is anybody around you growing, because you have stagnated. So if you appreciate that person's honesty and courage, and then work together to find a way out, yeah, that is responding positively.
Yeah,
productively.
Thank you very much, Atteeya. And I think that really sums up, because yes, as you said, the author really takes us through all these examples, but then wraps it all up by providing this toolbox, setting those 3 categories. So here I'd like to turn to our discussants and invite you to now again reflect on the book. Mr. Christian, again, lecturer from University of Dodoma, psychology, a PhD in psychology, dealing with emotional intelligence. Karibu.
Do you feel safe with me? Yes, my look. Does it make you feel safe? So for 2 days, I had a situation, and then I was advised to use the mask. So I was covering my mouth and my nose. And then when I was coming here, I decided to open. And I'm wondering if you feel safe with me. So it's an example of emotions. Fear is good, right? Fear is good. And it's our natural response to threat. And I think when you're fearing something in an organization, that means this, you're defending yourself, and it's healthy. So I really like the way the author defines. So she's talking from psychological point of view. She's talking about safety, and safety means I trust the environment and I feel safe. That means freedom from fear. I feel safe. That means I can be myself. And as I said, when you have fear, that means you're actually responding to a reality. And we are controlled by emotions, and sometimes we don't admit this, but over 90% people, research differ, but over 90% psychologists will agree that your decisions, your behavior are actually controlled by emotion. So you don't think as you may assume. Sometimes we feel like we are so logical animals, but it's true that we are emotional beings. 95% controlled by emotion. And when I have fear, that means I don't have to have evidence. It simply means the environment is not safe for me, and it's unconscious. And fear has impact, and as the author has shown, it can actually lead to problems in the organization. And when it mixes, so from psychology point of view, when fear mixes with anger, it can actually lead to people opposing the leader. And this can be detrimental. So I really like how she articulates chapter 4, that is safe and sound. She talks about open communication, citing an example. I don't know if I will pronounce it as it is supposed to be pronounced. Pixar, is it Pixar?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they had the brain trust, where people are invited to make mistakes, and mistakes are celebrated. And I was thinking whether this is really possible in our culture. Celebrating mistakes, allowing people to be imperfect. This is not easy. And, it begins with myself. When I was, when I was coming here, I thought, will this make me look normal? I don't look normal, right? And people may be threatened. And, it starts with how you look. We like to be perfect, right? I have to appear with the right look, yeah? And people have to like me, right? And this is, it has a connection with the way we are raised. We are raised to be perfect, right? And we grow up with this. And when you become a leader, you're only looking for perfect candidates. When people apply for a job,
True.
what are you looking for? You're looking for perfection. And remember, the applicant has just come from the university, right? And you're looking for perfection, employers. Yeah? You will always look for a perfect candidate, the person who is complete, and you don't allow for imperfections. So you'll pick for a perfect candidate. And when they come to work, you will always expect nothing but perfection. And I was really challenged when in Pixar. In the Pixar, people are allowed. You're allowed to come with imperfection, understanding that we learn when
We fail.
we learn when we make mistakes, right? So this was a very good example, and she explained very well and I think the leader, the CEO, the country director has. When I was listening to her, I was wondering whether how many organizations do we have of the like of Aga Khan, where people are allowed? I really wished to work at Aga Khan, where people are allowed. They have the free, they have a free space, right? They have a free space to make mistakes. So I would conclude by the way forward. So in chapter 7, she talks about making it happen. So she talks about deliberate leadership action, where the leader is aware that, fear, when people are fearful, people do not feel safe to, to experiment, you kill creativity.
Yeah.
But then I think now from psychology point of view, she didn't go deeper, because the challenge is knowledge is not enough. Awareness is not enough. You can read this book, I'm telling you, and tomorrow you create a safe environment in the world. So you understand the need to create safe environment, fearless organization, but you do the same. So maybe I would think that leaders have their own issues. Yeah, leaders have their own issues, and it can be deeper than the surface, the awareness level. People have their own issues, their personality issues, they have dysfunctional behaviors, and the kind of leader that we were hearing here, the leader who is secure, the leader who is able to invite differences, the inclusive leader. I think this leader must have been raised in an environment that was loving, so that you really feel safe, that people can differ with you and there's no problem. So for me, I think to deal with deeper issues that will make me as a leader feel safe to accept diversity, to be more inclusive, it may really call for really serious professional help. And I really understand that people do not admit that they need help. But I think the sign would be, if I'm in an organization, I'm leading the organization where people do not dare to differ, that's a sign that there's something wrong with you. So that's number one. And I think it can also call for trainings. So I have personal interest with this, emotional intelligence, for instance. I understand Uongozi Institute has a program to train leaders, and a leadership program, and that includes a package on emotional intelligence. I think leaders have to take advantage of such initiatives, emotional intelligence. And I think I will connect this book with this program. So whenever you feel like you are alone in the organization, people feel like to survive in the organization, they have to praise you, right? They have to comply with your ideas, then you know something is wrong. When people do not dare to come to you and share their opinion, then you understand something is wrong. And I think it could be a suggestion that maybe you go for training. Am I right? A training very specific on emotional intelligence. And then maybe for us, we have children. I really think it's important to reflect on how we raise our children. Creating a safe environment. You know, this begins early in life. And the first person who will make me feel safe when I have a person who is different from me, a person who can tell me something that is different, that environment is created by the father and the mother in the family. So I really think leadership begins with parenting. It has to start early so that you don't spend money later to go for trainings to, to deal with yourself. So I will say the author did a fantastic job. And I would also say maybe she needed to go beyond awareness, go beyond age. And as I explained, I really think professional help can really be of use. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
If I just may,
Yes.
so I would respectfully differ with you in one thing here, which is said it could be my upbringing. So yes, I was raised in a safe environment. However, I was raised with the notion that women cannot be leaders. I mean, women cannot even work outside the home. Where I came from, it was a very, very traditional culture. So I never thought that I would actually be having a job besides raising my children. So I wouldn't say it was entirely up at all, actually, to the way I was raised. I was raised in such a way that I should be a good wife and a good cook and a good mother. I think everybody was very shocked when I actually went and I got a job. But to be honest, I think where my journey started was my first boss. My first boss was an excellent, inclusive, empathetic leader who actively sought my feedback and employed me not for my qualifications or skills, but for attitude. And that has stayed with me until today because I felt that is what helped me to grow and to be what I am today. So that is also the power of role modeling.
Yes, I was going to say, which is what I think this book really speaks to, that looking beyond the talent, looking beyond the degree and what it is that this person has studied, looking beyond all of these other even cultural issues, but not modeling and how to create that entire. But again, here you've also showed another concept in the book, productive conflict. Yes. So now we turn to our second discussant, Mr. Ahmed Dosa, from the CEO for Dar Ceramica, who can also offer us some insights now, maybe from the business perspective, linking it directly with what the author is telling us about creating now these fearless. We've heard the psychology, now we would like to hear the business side.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. And good evening, everyone. First, I would say thank you, Namwaka. Thank you, Atteeya, and thank you, Mr. Kadari Singo, for having this time to sit together and discuss this book. I was really asking myself, after all what Atteeya and Christian have said, what am I supposed to speak? I think they've exhausted enough. So, but one thing I really want to share out of the great and vast experience actually they've shared from the book is the business side of it. This is actually one of the globally acclaimed book now because psychological safety is actually an important context that was actually left behind. Coming to find out that we were actually moving after crafting the strategy, building innovation on the business models, building resilient teams, which are actually long-term. But exactly, there's actually one component that was actually missing in making sure everything becomes sustainably correct. So I was asking when Atteeya was speaking about Gen Z, I was actually talking to a brother the other day and told him, like, do you know why they say they were partyless? They were leaderless. Why? Because they wanted to break the stigma of fear. If you know that you're reporting to someone, there are things you will automatically feel hesitant to respond to. Human beings are, just like the way Christian said, we are logical beings, but in the sense that fear is part of our fiber. So, and fear of the unknown is natural. And when they were actually saying we're partyless and leaderless, they were actually trying to say there's nothing to fear than fear itself. So looking at what Amy was presenting, when you look at what she actually shared on her TED Talk, she was trying to say that psych space in the workplace, it's actually creating a self-interpersonal risk, where you can just go and have a space where you don't feel backward when you challenge the previous existing narratives. Your opinions matter. Your views on different spaces that has already been structured differently, they literally make sense. And speaking about failure, when you read the book, it's like, it's a transformative way of saying, like, failure can be fuel.
Yes.
Yes.
That's
So
a very good one.
yeah. So, but how do you translate failure? That is what is important. Because the other day I was actually having a discussion with my guys from the ecosystem, what do you call, innovative space, and I was telling them, like, why is it that our ecosystem, our startup ecosystem, is not growing? You have pleasant pitch decks. You know how to pivot. You know how to present. You know where the investors are. Why is your innovation part not actually meeting the investment space?
Mm.
What is it the problem is? So actually the problem is just the psychological space. Everyone feels entitled that no one can question my pitch deck. This is what makes sense.
Yeah.
You understand? So you see on the business part of it. But again, apart from the Google, which is this is a normal narrative. It's well scientific and systematic researched on. But look at Netflix.
Mm.
The biggest market for Netflix was actually the North part. But when they were looking at expanding to the Latin America, I mean, the discussion was hot. Even some of the people lose their jobs because these are the standards we have set for Netflix. How do you want us to go and set standards the Mexican way, the Brazil way? We all know it. But the discussion was like the way you have said it here, like at some point in times when you're a leader, let the best idea win. Don't look at where the idea is coming from, but let the best idea win. So one of the guys who actually had a Mexican background say, like, look here, there are a lot of things that we can do at Netflix, looking at the grounds of Latin American culture, and they will really make Netflix a turnaround. So that's where the shows like the one in Brazil called the 3%, Santina, that's how it came from. And that's how Netflix broke into the market of Latin America. And we all know the story now, the rest is history. So, so these are the case studies where, like, it's not about there's a saying that says it's not about the size of the dog in a fight. It's about the size of the fight in a
With the
dog.
dog, yeah.
You understand? So it really doesn't matter who massages your ego, but does it make sense? If it makes sense, then that's the narrative that we should follow. But again, I like the way one of the reflection is like how he has hypothesized strategy. You know, in most organization, a strategy is a well-kept plan that it should be KPI attached and we all follow.
Right.
But in the book, she has critically shown that it's okay to have a plan, but let's hypothesize it in the sense of time.
Yeah.
So that we critically and systematically know that if there are some corrections in the course of time that we need to put forward and making sure everything makes sense. And the last two things that I would share is like, psychologically safety is not about lowering standards.
Yes, so true. Yeah, absolutely.
So it's not the fact that you say like, okay, I like being nice. I like being heard. I don't want to be looked down and compromising the standards that we are actually aiming as an institution. So as much as she put all the academic narratives rigorously through the storytelling, but objectively, he was trying to show it academically that there are some values in organization that shouldn't be compromised.
Yes.
Which is standards. And again, the issue of measure. You know, she spoke about the 7 light pointer, where like she was actually trying to measure. One of the things that we're good at is like setting out things that we don't measure. What gets measured gets valued. You know, you cannot get a proper value out of something that it's not measured. So she was actually trying to say like, yes, we have hired right, because we all understand a company is a combination of two good things: the culture and the people. People with good characters, ability, and the passion to marry to the mission, and the culture that is correct. So it was actually trying to share that, okay, we can impose all of these narratives, but there should be a way to measure them. Measure in the sense that what happens well in Google might not be happening well with us. So make a cultural fit of your business portfolio in the sense that whatever psychological safety you are creating, it should relate to predominantly your values in terms of business. So I really like the fact that she went through, but at least she gave us a stage that I think this is the stage. So to me, those were my reflection. I think most of the rest my colleagues have shared, and it's such a nice book as well. And I would really commend everyone to take time to read. It's not only for the places where we're working, but it's as well for your own personal conduct. You know, so many people are very defensive, not because of the personality, but because maybe sometimes it could be just because of the understanding. So if you rip off that fearful understanding, maybe through impactful knowledges like this, maybe the story will be different. Yeah. So thank you so much for having me, and those are my reflections. Thank you.
And I think you touched on that part of the book when she spoke about what psychological safety is not.
Yes.
And I think one of the pillars was it is not about lowering standards. And also she said, but it's not about just being nice.
Yeah.
It's not about being acceptable and just wanting things or no conflict. And So thank you for really bringing it, because we've talked about what psychological safety is, but I think thank you for pointing out that what it is not.
Yes.
And I think that's a misconception that we may have. So now we're opening it up to the floor. We still have a few minutes, maybe 10 minutes or so. But I'd also like to welcome and encourage our online participants to share questions online. We already have received at least one. So please, online viewers, please ask questions, and we are seeing them, and we will get to them. But for now, as we're receiving more from online, can we get some questions from the floor, please? And as you ask the questions, please, as usual, introduce yourself, your name, where you're from, and then pose the question.
I have a comment.
Okay,
on
very
the
well.
question. I've been working with United Nations in many different countries, and I have different size of groups. It's at my team. And in UN system, people come from various cultures, from so many countries, you see. And they have religious bias, they have personal bias, economic bias. And then you have to, it is a problem to bring them to one objectives. So what we do normally is that first of all, we don't think that we are leaders, but we say that we will try to cream everything what they have. We take it from them. That is what we want, because the best manager is the one who can use the knowledge of the others, because the manager does not have all the knowledge. So there are engineers, environmentalists, so many. Take them out. Now, how do we do that? And that is one important, that you put them where you started from, where you are going, and what is your last achievement? What do you need at the end? When we put all of that, only all these things, the people who are working, they themselves start being active. And then what we have is that there may be some shy people who are less active, but then we have a weekly meeting. And we talk it very softly, and don't use bombastic approach, bombastic words, don't make it very small. And then slowly bring them to the final. And we do achieve. We do achieve. Most of the things which we plan in United Nations, we do achieve with so many varieties of people, with so many, in terms of income category, in terms of countries, in terms of everything. So it is possible. The fact is that we don't even think what psychologically they are thinking of. We know that they are psychological effect. What we are trying to tell them is where you are, where we are going, and what is the end goal. And they do. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Karibu.
Greetings. My name is Kahema Fimbo. I'm a member of Ungozi Institute Resource Center. Well, I'm very happy that today we have a team of panelists. Okay. So I have a question. Start with the people from the academic side. It is, from my observation, I've seen that many people have fear because they're from the educational curriculum, the way they are groomed, especially in universities. You can find a person who is not that highly educated, does not have that kind of fear. But when the person who has entered into university, you find that he or she is very fearful, and that fear starts from the culture that is in the university, that you cannot argue with the professor, you cannot critique the professor. So maybe from your perspective, how can we change that culture? And also I have a question from the business side. From my observation here in Tanzania, I've seen that many organizations, when they are small, you can have that you can see that the workers, they have that time of even to discuss with the management, to share the ideas. But when the organizations becomes big, you find that the most leaders, becomes like a lion. You cannot even meet them. I have one of my friends, he once told me that in his office, that the CEO, if he boards the elevator, if you take that same elevator that time, he may even fire you. He sees that like it's a disrespect, that there is a barrier between him and the worker. So how can we leverage expansion and the psychological safety of workers? Those are my two questions.
Karibu.
Thank you. My name is Austin Chimpe. I am public servant, assistant lecturer from Tanzania Public Service College, and also a subject matter expert at Tanzania Institute of Project Management. Thank you for the good discussion, especially from Madam Subani. From the presentation, or we call it the talk, it clearly shows that you are a leader who cares about humans.
So,
And I don't want to talk about the book because our discussant have done a very good job on that. What I'm going to do is to make my reflection on what is from the book. And those ideas, we have to implement them so that the book to fulfill the promises from the book. It's not about reading, it's about turning that ideas into action. So I'm thinking from the public service perspective, as a trainer, as a researcher in public service, I'm so much fascinated with the ideas from these books, especially from the Global North. Wogozi Institute have done a very great job in implementing this, in infusing those ideas to us. But there is something very deep in our society, and that is our culture, the code of our culture. It's something different. That's why most of these ideas from the Global North, they do not match with our software. And when I speak about software, it's a culture. You know, culture is a toolkit that help us to survive. In my research, of course, I'm doing PhD, and for the first time, my problem was emotional intelligence. I was thinking how our systems marginalize people, and the people are not living in their true self. So in research, I've come to understand that even the ideas of emotional intelligence will not work best to us because of the culture. You know, America have what we call the adolescent culture. You know, Americans, they can speak, they can discuss, they can do, you know, the character of adolescent. But here in Africa, in Tanzania in particular, we see our leaders as a superhuman. People who cannot fail, people who have power, people who have, that is our culture, that we see that. And we have this cortex brain that we think, and we can speak here, we have leadership, and we have a lot of leaders who came to be trained at Uongozi Institute, and they have that immediate inspiration that we are going to implement this. But deep inside, in their emotional software, there is a deep emotional highways that contradict with what they are thinking about. So that's why most of these trainings, interventions about changing the culture, the leadership styles, most of them fall flat. Why? Because of the emotional software that we have. And if we want to implement new ideas to us, let us start from the very beginning. Let's invest to the youth. We need to create this club, the leadership clubs, from the primary school, secondary schools. We can fight with these people who are elders. They cannot change. They cannot change. So we have to go deep to them. And we have, I can tell you an example from somebody called Lapaile. This is a French marketing consultant and the CEO and the founder of Archetype Discovery worldwide. That man have one big idea, and that he says that he don't trust what people tell him. Why? Because not people lies, but because most of people, they don't know what they say because of the deep psychological aspects within themselves that they don't know. And they have, according to him, people have 3 brains. We have cortex brain that leads on. You can say this, you can say this. For instance, if I ask you, who are you? You think, so what can I tell him or her? Then we have a limbic brain. A limbic is the emotional brain. And we have a reptilian brain. And that reptilian brain is very strong. And it's always winning. And have no argument, have no sense. It's about acting. So you may have a lot of thinking at the surface level, but in the deep, in the emotional highways, you cannot change. So let's invest it with the youth. Let's invest them. Let's implant this idea. Thank you.
Very much. So I'd like to, I think there's 2 questions directly at the panelists. Let's hear from the lady at the back before we turn to, and also I'll read out the online questions.
Yeah, so thank you so much. My name is Zainab Jango, and I'm also a member here. Very, very impressive. I haven't read the book, but I can't wait to read it.
Good.
And just so you know, Ms. Atteeya, I'm also a stakeholder at Aga Khan. My young son goes there. And this actually makes so much sense why I'm actually here. It feels really a connecting moment because a lot of the things you've actually said, you've also exuded that at the school and the places that I've seen that managed or affiliated with Aga Khan. So congratulations on that. My question is more on a personal level as a learning tool for myself. I wanted to know about, I've been reading more about knowledge management. And as I'm listening to you, I'm sorry I came in late, but you've talked about collaboration a few times. And this also comes up as a benefit, one of the benefit of knowledge management. So I wanted to know, how did you capture this? Like listening to your humble beginnings, like how did you know that you needed to capture this information? Because clearly it's information that is very fresh and we're all excited. I don't know if we're all excited, but we're all learning something. And it's something that I don't know if it's relearned or it's learned for the first time, but clearly it's something that most of us might want to know more. And it also appears so much that it's almost like it's a tacit knowledge, something that it's very difficult to explain. And why I want to know the capturing part or aspect of it is because a lot of us are used to learn from the explicit knowledge. So this is probably my intrinsic reason for understanding. Thank you.
Thank you. And so can I just read the 2 questions, because I think, again, they tie in directly to what we were discussing just before we open it up to the floor. So we have a question from Donald Iwonasia. He says, I'm Donald from Babati town, so thank you for joining us all the way from Babati. And I would like to know, what enchanting practices can teams weave into their daily rhythm to joyfully honor intelligent failures? So we're talking about our culture of accepting failure as a success, or to celebrate failures. Cultivating a positive value culture that embraces setbacks or failures as stepping stones towards collective wisdom and growth. Yes, so that's one. Thank you. Excellent question, Donald. And the second question is from Amani Vulumisu, who asked very straightforward, how can a team recover after psychological safety has been damaged? So again, for all of us, at least in workspaces, when this sense of safety has been removed, how can teams recover? And so maybe a few tips. I think the book also does offer some tools and guidance as to, again, how to start to recreate that sense of safety. So before we are running out of time, we have about 5 minutes. So if I could quickly ask the discussants each to respond. I think you had one question about cultures in cultures within our education system, specifically in universities. Another one was the youth, which I think is almost similar, starting young, getting them, Sister Tumesha Zoeka, like, let's try with our kids, right? And then there was something else about the leadership, the power that leaders naturally tend to have, and the fear that comes with it. And then, of course, the issues about embracing failures and coming up with tools and skills to recreate safety, psychological safety in the organization. I think with that, we would have reached the end of our session. At which point I will invite Niwagira, who's with us today. George is not with us today, but we do have just as good as an alternate to George and Niwagira. He will come and give us a little bit more information about the Resource Center. As I said, a lot of you are new here today, which is fantastic to see, as Mr. Singo said in the beginning. But just so that also our members online and others who have joined us here today, and also our book reviewer, Atteeya, asked immediately, how can she join and how can she be part of this Resource Center? So Niwagira will come and produce that. So if quickly, 1 minute, please, to respond to those quick questions. If we could have.
I still don't feel safe. So the online, if you can avoid me, I'm sorry. Quickly, we have the culture that is the hierarchical, right? So from the family, it's the parent who knows everything. You don't differ with the parent. And parents will use threat as a way of controlling the children. And when you talk about nonviolent disciplining measures, parent will say it's impossible. This doesn't work in Tanzania, right? Yeah, you have to, keep your authority. And then you come to school, you meet another authoritative figure, and that's a teacher. He knows, they know, I have to be inclusive. She or he, they know everything, right? And what they tell you is what you do. And you see that is reinforcing, they reinforce the fear. So you have fear for family, then you have fear for school, right? And then you come to the university, even worse. The professor knows everything. Yeah, you don't differ with him. So you can read, if I'm teaching with Niwagira, and you take, we're teaching the same course, and then you take his notes, you fail because it has to be my notes, right? So you have fearful classroom. So how to change? I think it's possible, and I don't think fear should be African. Yeah, we should not say this is how we are raised and this is our culture. I really don't think it has to be that way. So I'm happy to hear from my brother. I really believe we can have fearless families, right? Fearless parenting, upbringing. Then we have fearless school, fearless classroom. And now the Ministry of Education is talking about learner-centered, which is basically opening up a space where learners are involved, right? And I know it's not easy. It's very difficult. I interact with teachers. I do some trainings. And you talk about involving the learner, but the teacher will tell you it doesn't work. You cannot involve the learner and you meet your goals. Yeah, you have to preach, you have to lecture. But I believe it's possible. Learner-centered, democracy, a democratic classroom is possible. So that's why I was saying it has to start early. So fearless family, fearless community, fearless classrooms, then you will have fearless organization. And I believe it's possible. So if you only talk about fearless organization, and then you forget all the other institutions in the society, I don't think it will work. It will simply be a very good, a cliche, a very good talk, talking about emotional intelligence, talking about fearless organization, but in practice, it doesn't work. So I think it has to be very comprehensive. Thank you.
Thank you. Very,
Yeah.
very good, Mr. Doss.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for the question. I'll be very brief. If I could respond to your question is, there are different types of leadership. There's a modern leadership. There's a traditional leadership. Just as the way cultures are evolving, leadership as well is evolving. When you look at such scenarios in the 90s and in the early 2000s, you could have as well tell you couldn't be getting leaders like Atteeya in those ages. Why? Because leadership has evolved, because the world itself has evolved, because of different narratives that are actually shaping the global landscape. Now, organization is not an individual. We come from a situation where organization was an individual. Now, you remember times when you hear a certain name, he works with this company. Since when has he left? You attach individuals to organizations. Now an organization is a layer, across layer, beneath layer, through layers, where you need a lot of components all gathered together to make sure it's functional. So individuality doesn't make practical sense. I don't mean that there are no such leaders now, but with time, with the VUCA world we are, definitely they will be outcompeted. I'll give you lastly the example of the one who actually, the founder for OpenAI, Salman. You know what he said last time? People believe in ChatGPT more than they believe me. Actually, he was the one who invented the chatbot, ChatGPT. He said, people believe in it more than they believe in me. So what does it mean? Leadership now has moved from individualism to what you bring on the table. So I think with time, that narrative will automatically change. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think the book was also really clear that the concept of teaming, I think that the author, Amy, really put that everything now, like in terms of success, is about team, and she branded it dynamic teaming. And so leaders have to understand that it is about everything surrounding you. Yeah. And to borrow from your word, like everything in your ecosystem, right? It's not just the one thing, and it's not just about the talent, it's a combination of things, but at the bottom, overarching rather layer is creating that psychological safety. Atteeya, maybe. Yes, Karibu-san. Yes.
Just a quick comment on my brother here who said that we need to invest in the youth. Do they invest to themselves also?
Yes.
Because sometimes I spoke to one of the former prime ministers of one of the countries in Africa, and he says, you'll find our youth, they know more about the football in Europe, the European League, that they know about themselves. They can tell you, Diamond, they know when Diamond got married, and then he slept where, yesterday he was where, and they know about all that, but they don't have enough information about basic things. For example, sometimes the youth join very late in decision-making process,
right,
after things become the law. I'll give you a simple example. It's your time to engage when we're developing a policy. You don't wait until the policy is passed, it becomes a law, and here you are chasing the football in Europe, and then you want to go in the streets and say, we're not involved. It's too late for you to be involved because it's become a law already. Now you go against it, you are in trouble. So what I'm saying is, do the youth invest in themselves? That's the question. How much time do you invest in reading? Sometimes we want a platform of this psychological safety, but you don't have enough evidence of whatever you say. So you need evidence-based arguments. And sometimes the elders, they ignore the youth because they don't have enough evidence. Some of them don't even know how the government works. You just read one line and run with it. Oh, you know, there's trouble here. We need to go to the streets. No, it doesn't work like that. I can just hear our neighbors here how they're just destroying everything. But at the end of the day, the same taxes you collect are going to use to rebuild the country. So you destroy and tomorrow we rebuild, use the taxes, and we tax you more. So we need to have a platform whereby even if the youth want to come in and they want to be a part of it, they need to have enough evidence. They have to educate themselves enough. And we have a problem right now because nowadays, in the past when we went to school, for you to get just an idea of emotional intelligence, you have to go through several books before you can write a paper. You have to read at least maybe 6 books before you can write a paper of which is 20 pages. And you have to write by hand. Nowadays, you just type one line and the things come and you run with it. You don't have enough collection of ideas and different sources. And now this brings a lot of trouble. So this platform, as you said, have to be meaningful. You said that we have an argument, we create a psychological safety environment, but is it meaningful? Is it respectful? That's another problem we have. Respect.
Right.
You cannot just be arguing without having what? Respect. There's nothing you can change. African elders expect some kind of what? Respect. Now, if you argue without being respectful, you are going to get this what? They say that's the laws of motion. They say for every action,
There's an equal and opposite.
there's an equal and opposite what?
Action.
Santeni.
Thank you. So I think, Mr. Singo, you pointed to the issue of agency, individual agency, which I think also, Atteeya, you pointed to the fact that just knowing to do good, knowing to be moral, but then to be self-driven, which Mr. Singo is questioning if also our youth is self-driven, but then also the platforms and the issue of respect. And I think that also came out in the book that what psychology safety is not. It is not about being disrespectful. It is not about that lack of respect for others' opinions, thoughts, cultures. And in bringing it back to also, Mr. Ndosa, you said it very well, that making these concepts work for your particular context. So in this sense, like for our culture here, again, speaking to your point, our culture here in Tanzania, at that national cultural level, and then, in Tanzania, we're complicated. We have different tribes, we have different religions, we have the age factor, which is very real for us. I mean, my children are so fascinated by the fact that I still become like a small child when I'm talking to my mother, or I still serve her. When I go to my parents' house, I'm a child, and I follow the rules of that house, and I'm respectful. So it's a very different way to then bring about these concepts into our world. But we have to then know how to translate so that they do translate. Because I think what you're saying is that sometimes they don't translate. You're using the pathways, but they just don't translate into our context. But how to make these concepts and the books and the leadership skills that Uongozi is bringing us, how to now translate them into a language that we can understand, and in a way that we can understand, that implement it into a way that really makes leadership work for us, and our culture to work for us and not against us, which is, I think, what also Christian, you're saying. So let's give our key reviewer the last words in terms of responding to some of the issues that were raised, especially about creating that safety when it has been broken, and embracing embracing failure, and how to see failure and setbacks as growth. Karibu sana, Atteeya.
Thank you. So I would like to build a bit on what both of you have said. And that is, nothing, no idea, no strategy stands in isolation. Everything is relevance and context. And nothing is set in stone. It is an idea, and nothing is rigid. It's fluid. We have to learn how to adapt it to our context and our relevance and our situation. And that idea can then take so many different forms and yet not lose its essence. So it's really about the essence and then applying that into your particular situation. And another thing which you mentioned about leaders in the public sector, that is maybe more in the public sector, but there are such leaders everywhere who have that ego, who want that undue respect. There is a definite respect, but some are asking for, like literally subservience. But I always believe in be the change you want to see. So in your position, there are some things we cannot change, but whatever is in our, influence, circle of influence, and in our control and in our power, let's focus on that. We cannot change the whole world, but we can change ourselves, and we hope that somebody will be inspired by us and change. So in our positions, wherever we are leaders or team members or collaborators or in the home, whatever role we have, how do we provide psychological safety in that? And like I mentioned, I was inspired by my first boss. I wasn't born like that. And if you ask my team members, I'm sure there are some who may not be 100% happy with me. Nobody is perfect. So if I decide to say, okay, I'm an inclusive leader, and that's it, I don't need to read anything, I'm done, I'm perfect. But the context I'm working with is constantly evolving. And, we are living, like you mentioned, in a VUCA environment. Also, the people that I work with are completely different. And I know that there are some good people in my team, but they need a bit more of my firmness. So it doesn't mean that now I am just going to not be firm or not ask for KPIs or deliverables because I think that that person is not going to feel psychologically safe. I will make sure that within my firmness and determination, I am still providing psychological safety, and that person is able to come up and say why they can do that or why they can't do that. And I'm there to provide the support. So it is really contextual. But I was inspired by one of my previous line managers. But in between, I have had many line managers who are extremely traditional, especially if I'm a woman. I'm not that young, so my journey started 20 years ago. And I chose to embrace the person who made me feel the most comfortable, who made me feel if I don't make mistakes, I'm not going to learn, and I chose to role model that person so that I can help other people grow. So if you don't have anybody like that in your life, what I did not have access to at that time that much was the internet. So for me, that person became a role model. I would see him and think, that's how I want to become, not just in the attitude, but also in his rank. I would see that CEO wearing a suit, having a drive. I said, I need to become that. But I also see CEOs were very arrogant. And so I chose one to role model. If you don't have someone like that to role model, but you have access to technology and so much reading material, then you choose to become one somebody would like to role model. So it's not always about who should we change or what can we change, but when we feel we really can't change anybody, be the change you want to see. So I strongly believe in that. And I think the other question was around what do we do after psychological safety has failed. And so there is, and I would advise you to read this book. There is a whole chapter on that when the little girl in the hospital dies. And then they bring in an expert to come and check the procedures and why nobody spoke up and how she then changes things around and some strategies that she implements. And she asks a question to everybody. Have the procedures or something been as safe as you would like it to be this week? So it is then opens up a whole conversation. There is no blaming. Yeah, so I think psychological safety, if it has failed, the first and foremost thing is to admit, to recognize that we were not able to provide a safe space for people to contribute, to challenge us, to share ideas. The first thing is the acceptance, and then the apology. And sometimes it is too late when people have died, when people have become injured and will suffer that for the rest of their life. But if that is not the case, then you admit, you apologize, you tell your team that we are going to pull up our socks and find a way forward, transparency, honesty, communication, and then bring in the experts who can help you to take, to turn things around. But it always first starts with accepting and then communicating that you have realized what went wrong and you are now working towards changing that situation, and you will be holding, for example, focus group discussions to take feedback from people. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Atteeya, and thank you all for a very engaging discussion that really dove deep into the book and brought examples, real examples provided by the author, and then peppered now with other examples from Atteeya and the work that she's been doing in her leadership role, as well as our discussants. So thank you for that. I would now like to invite Namwaka to give us his own also. You've sat and listened, so a few of your own reflections as you also now inform participants about where we're sitting, this resource center, and how to be a member and how to better engage with the resource center. Karibu sana.
Thank you, Namwaka, our moderator. Good evening. Much have been said, and therefore going to it. But allow me to recognize the presence of few students from the Dar es Salaam Tumaini University. If you are here, please, may you raise up your hands. Oh, thank you for joining us. I had prior communication with the lecturer, and he said he could send some to learn. He's a good member of our book events. So keep it up. This is the platform for you to learn. You have heard youths are most interested in no, I can say more things. Yes, so it's good to have you in such a discussion. We have two resource centers. This is the main one. And we have another branch in Dodoma, located at Kambarage Tower, the 8th floor. And today we have also 2 or 3 members from Dodoma Resource Center. May you also raise up your hands?
No.
Hey. Thank you also for joining us. We will have a cup of tea outside while we are proceeding with our discussion and networking. Now, how to become a member of the Resource Center? We have the membership form. We will request the new faces to join this reading team so that we continue together to learn and relearn. Our membership fee is very small, cannot compare with the benefits you are going to get. So please fill the form. You will be provided with the control number and you will make payments. From there, you are a member of Uongozi Institute Resource Center. And the membership gives you an opportunity to use our both resource centers. You can borrow a book in Dodoma and return it in Dar es Salaam. You can do the same if you are in Dar es Salaam. Let us keep this ball rolling and encourage many to join the resource center and the reading team. Thank you so much for joining us. Then you have to come to Dodoma and see. Then from there you will know which one is bigger. Thank you. Thank you, Namwaka.
Thank you.
Congratulate the dad who brought the daughters. Please, can you please introduce your daughters and yourself? They are young, but they're the youngest here in this.
Yeah, actually, I was looking at this guy in the, I thought he would mention me, and then I said, this guy. Yeah, I came here with my two daughters. If you can stand, please.
Sorry,
Yeah.
tell us your name and where you're
This one is Dorothy, the other one is Herity. This is from 4, this is from 3. They're big book readers,
Oh.
actually. Yeah, thank you so much.
I have my daughter here also.
Ah. And I think that speaks to this culture that we're trying to ensure that we're raising, starting from the household level, our children, and exposing them to such debates, but also again commending Uongozi Institute and the work that it's doing in bringing these global concepts, because we're still part of the world as Tanzania. We are ourselves, our own culture context, which we also have to firmly protect as ours, but we're still part of this bigger world. So Uongozi Institute really tries to bring these big, sometimes overwhelming, sometimes scary concepts in leadership and sustainable development, and to unpack it into ways and layers in which can make sense to us here in Tanzania. So that we are still part of the world while maintaining our uniqueness as Tanzanians. So I think that also really should commend Uongozi for being our eyes and ears out there in the world. And knowing what there is and what we need to do as leaders or as community members, as family members in the political space, in the social space, in the economic space, but then bringing these spaces and these platforms where we can now translate it into our own Tanzanian-ness. Like,
Special hand there, I think there's something very special. She was told about, I don't know.
Oh, I couldn't. Oh, Masini, I didn't see you, Paul.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity. My name's Given Sam, and I wanted to say that I'm also a very good stakeholder of this place. We usually host book sessions as well, and we have one on Saturday with our special guest Fatima Deuji. Warmly welcome.
Which time?
From 3 to 5 on Saturday.
Yeah. So Uongozi really is creating promoting the culture of reading. So that I think the culture of reading, which Uongozi Institute also you're working very hard, and visibility is clear that you're creating a spaces where people can actually come and they read and they find books that are relevant. So hongereni sana. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for coming to this session. Again, for the old faces, good to see you again. The new faces, please come back and please join up. Nwagiri and the team will not let you out to have tea and coffee unless you sign up. But please, Nwagiri, also make sure that our esteemed book reviewer becomes a member, because she asked specifically how to become a member. And yes, karibuni, this tea, coffee outside, and a chance to continue this discussion, continue to network, continue to build our culture of psychological safety, right? Which starts with us, that sense of agency. So with that, nashukuru sana, asanteni sana, jioni njema, and till we meet again. Asante.